And so he decided he wanted to take this melon back to Michigan because my older siblings he wanted, this was the souvenir. He wanted to bring this back to my brother and my sister because they needed to try this Uzbek melon. So he tells the story how he takes it from like Tashkent and then they go to Tajikistan and this melon is like rolling around in the like airplane bins or rolling around in the tour buses, but it's literally like going with him across Central Asia on this Soviet-sponsored medical tour. Finally, he gets it back to the US. They fly into Dulles in Washington, D.C. and apparently the guy just says, the customs agent's like, oh, you guys came back from the Soviet Union? You know, it's in 1978. It's height of the Cold War. What did you bring with you? And my dad's like, oh, I didn't buy anything. Yeah. It's true. He apparently did not buy anything. He goes, oh, but I just have this melon. Just this one melon, he says.
Dad.
I know. And he like added it on. It was like a P.S. I've got some fruit. And apparently the custom agent was like, no, you can't bring this melon into America. And supposedly he then like picked it up and walked it over to a garbage bin and just dumped it in. And my dad just like watched him do this. And as he was recounting the story for me, for the book specifically, he just goes, I bet you that customs agent ate it, that son of a bitch.
Hello! This is the Delicious Legacy podcast, and I'm your host, Thom. The food of the past always fascinated me. What did our ancestors eat? Do we have recipes and ingredients that survive down the millennia to this day? What are the long-lost ones, the ones we forgot or discarded away as our tastes changed? And should we bring them back? What are the myths we tell ourselves about our national dishes and cuisines? How interconnected our past cultures were and what role the long-distant trades played, shaping our food cultures to this day? What can we learn from the past about our diet, nutrition, feeding a country's population, the happiness that eating together brings, and how to protect nature, the soil, the environment, and it sustainably without leaving people hungry and the planet scarred? The past can be a foreign pantry, to paraphrase a popular saying, but it is also delicious, full of fantastical tales, unique moments that shaped our forefathers and stories of extraordinary people. If we get a glimpse into an ancient kitchen, we can understand the origins of our recipes and the reasons of how and what we eat today. We can touch Ariadne's thread and follow it out of the kitchen's labyrinth, free to go all over the world to taste the universal, fundamental truths that connect us with one another and with our shared history. This is the quest of the Delicious Legacy podcast. Welcome to another archaeogastronomical adventure. And before we go to our episode proper, a quick interjection here to thank all of the new Patreon backers. Your support means the world to me, my dear new Patreon members. And also, I'm thanking, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, all of the loyal supporters of the past 5 years. We've been on some adventures, haven't we? There's a wealth of gastronomical treasures to discover in the Patreon archives of the Delicious Legacy's posts. Recipes and musics and thoughts about past gourmands, historical dishes, and ancient, almost lost traditions from cultures the world over. Plus, of course, there are bonus episodes and extra audio content for your ears and only. So why don't you join me there? Now I know that times are hard financially for everyone, and things are uncertain. And if only there was a certain academic discipline that could teach us about the past and the lessons we could learn. Anyway, since times are hard and many people can't afford to support financially the podcast, I understand that. But you who love it so much, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or Acast, or Pocket Casts, and wherever else you get your podcast from. It helps enormously to get the podcast out there on top of people's feed suggestions. And of course, please also share it with friends and family and colleagues. We have many more ancient adventures to explore together. Anyway, back to today's subject. It was a wet and grey early February day. A day that you cannot really describe as cold, but the humidity in the air, this wet dampness, was penetrating in your bones. It was making it feel exceptionally London cold weather. not pleasant at all. When I went to meet Anna Ansari for our interview in central London. Our destination was an Uyghur restaurant in Clerkenwell. Certainly a cuisine that is in the more niche category of restaurants that are in London. But they have been popping up and springing here and there in different areas the last 5 or so years. And it seemed like an appropriate place to meet Anna and talk about her book, Silk Roads, basically the cuisine of this vast Central Asia area, from Baku to Beijing, Azerbaijan to China. And the Uyghur cuisine highlights this interconnectedness of Central Asia, and it gives us a very, very good and detailed picture of what the food is and how it slowly changes from east to west and from west to east in these vast central plateaus and plains and steppes of our Eurasian continent. The Uyghur people are basically a massive ethnic minority in the western fringes of China, and they're Turkic people, and they are part of these migratory nations that went from east to west for thousands of years, and they have connections both in language and culture and food and religion-wise as well, with people all the way to Azerbaijan, thousands of miles away. And this venue proved to be exceptionally perfect for my interview with Anna, as I said earlier. So, Uyghur people are Turkish-speaking Islamic people who primarily live in China's Xinjiang province, and they are descended from the Sogdians of old, a fierce and powerful Turkic European people who once made their capital at Samarkand in modern-day Uzbekistan. Until, that is, Alexander the Great made his way westward, arrived at and conquered Samarkand in 329 BCE, and famously proclaimed, "Everything I heard about Samarkand is true, except for one thing. It turned out to be more beautiful than I could imagine." Since then, since that defeat and the loss of their capital, the Sogdians turned to trade, and until the end of the Tang dynasty, were the main traders of these ancient routes in Central Asia that we famously call Silk Roads, due to both their physical control of the desert oases and the trading posts, as well as the fact that Sogdian was the lingua franca of Central Asian trade. This is from the actual book, the intro of Anna's book, Silk Roads. This is part 2 of my conversation with Anna Ansari about her fantastic cookbook, Silk Roads, a flavor odyssey with recipes from Baku to Beijing. And on today's episode, our conversation takes us to the origins of spinach, the word cumin in China and Persia, the flavor of sturgeon, who claims to be the parent country of rice, the origins of melons, the melons we eat, and of course things like yogurt. How did yogurt arrived in USA in a way? A very interesting story. A very interesting and recent story of the 20th century and immigration and of course commercialization. Right. On that note, let's go back to the episode to continue my conversation and of course food with Anna on that beautiful Uyghur restaurant in Clerkenwell, London. I like the story about the spinach.
Spinach?
Yeah.
Yeah? That was one of the things. Like I was saying, that there's so much that I personally discovered over the course of researching. That was one of the last things I actually discovered. So spinach, I understood it at some point in time. Basically, I was like, oh yeah, no, spinach, I learned that spinach came into China over the trade routes and that it was originally from Iran. Like, or by originally, again, I mean, this is where this plant was originally cultivated in the world.
Yeah.
Now it's just sold in bags everywhere, and baby spinach and this and that. But it is from Iran, native to Iran originally, and it spread across the world via Iran and via trade networks and immigration and empire. But it made its way into China through Nepal. And apparently the Nepalese king sent some spinach to Xi'an, to the capital of the Tang Dynasty, Chang'an, modern day Xi'an, as tribute. Like, spinach was this like amazing, wonderful, here, have some spinach. Like, I will send you this royal vegetable. And actually there's an old, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but I have his name in the book, an Arab historian who refers to spinach as like the chieftain of the leafy greens from like thousands of years ago. Like, so spinach is always, it wasn't just Popeye, right? Like, spinach has been recognized for its importance and its taste for an extremely long time. But it wasn't until, it was honest to goodness, I remember sitting in my back garden in East London in the heat, which was it's always nice when it gets warm in the UK and you're like, yes, I will work outside. And it was so hot that day. And I like gasped out loud when I was reading this old text about Iran and China and vegetables, basically. And I learned in there that bo tai, which means, is basically, that's the Chinese word, Mandarin word for spinach. And tai is sort of the designator of vegetable in Mandarin. So they're tai, this vegetable, this vegetable, this vegetable. But bo tai is spinach. And I learned in this book that bo tai, apparently the bo refers to an archaic designation for Persia that they don't use anymore. Nobody uses it anymore. No one knows what this is, but some place called Bolingguo. And so basically in modern day Chinese and modern day Mandarin Chinese, every time you're saying spinach, you're basically saying really old Persian vegetable. And like, that to me was so weirdly mind blowing. Like, this is a word that I learned, that same year that I first had Uyghur cuisine, but I had no idea that sort of there was a connection to my heritage, to Iranian heritage, to, Persian foodstuffs and trade with spinach. Like,
it brings,
it's amazing.
It brings those two ends of the...
I was like, what? No, it was really like, honest to God, Thom, I was like, what? I'm like, well, this has got to go in here. This has got to go in the book. And I remember, and I called up my dad. I was like, told him, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. He was like, did you know? He was like, no, I didn't know this. Let me go back to watching CNN. Like, have you heard what Trump has done now? Kind of thing. He was like, whatever, Anna. But like these kinds of, connections, even, the word cumin, for instance, in Mandarin is ziran, and that comes from the Persian. And cumin is also a derivation from the zira. It's like zira. I don't even know zira. Something zira. Right. In Farsi. Okay. They're all etymologically related as well. So there are these things that we don't even necessarily. They're like just these hidden connections under our noses in our everyday life that can be related back to this massive landmass. That again, I think has just been really underexplored when it comes to food history, cookbooks. We know, you look at this plate of noodles here, we know that the peppers come from the New World. We know that the tomatoes come from the New World. If we had potatoes, we all know, everybody knows that, like, what came from the Columbian Exchange. Even now, it's like, oh, we're all eating quinoa. Well, everybody knows that's from Peru, right? But we don't necessarily have an understanding of what came to us across the land. Like, all of those things are sort of, those have been shared across these Western European colonial empirical like trade routes, right? The spice trade, the slave trade, the sugar trade. What did the Brits do? The Dutch do? The English, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Americans. But it's like, so between Baku and Beijing and a little bit further, right? Like between like the Korean Peninsula and Istanbul, things moved across there as well.
Millennia.
Yeah. And nobody pays any attention to it. Like, are you kidding me? There's so much to learn. And like, I feel as though I've just personally scratched the surface.
Absolutely,
and like you could just go on forever.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Well, it's really great that the book, I think it's timely book basically to have now. And Caroline Eden as well writes a lot about Central Asia stuff.
Yeah.
So that's another beautiful perspective. Not food per se, but it's also the cuisine, the travel perspective of,
Oh my gosh, her writing
culture.
is so incredible.
I love her.
Like,
yeah.
she has such insight into the cultural viewpoints of everyone she speaks with. But I worried a little bit frankly, about her books. I was like, oh, she's written, but I think our books are extremely different.
Oh, yeah. No.
And I also think,
You're right about that.
you look at this, how many cookbooks are there about Indian food, about Chinese food, about American food, about British food? Like,
Countless.
countless.
Yeah,
So, to have a few about an entire major part of the world, I think is okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only okay is not even enough. This book has 90 recipes. I submitted around 120, and then we cut them slowly down. But I mean, out of those 120 recipes were the ones that I felt were ready to be sent to the editors. Like, I have other ones that I still have just some notebooks full of notes, and there's so much food, there's so much history, there's so much innovation, and there's so much derivation. You can have a dish, in one part of Uzbekistan that tastes different from the dish in the other part of Uzbekistan simply because they cook their rice in a different way or they use a different kind of oil. Literally, like, we use melon seed oil here, and we use cotton seed oil here, and those have very different flavors.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
imagine like sunflower seed oil and olive oil. They're different.
Yeah.
So there's so much more, I think, to be explored in the Western world about this more sort of Central Asian, Eastern world. And I'm happy to have just been able to just start, just a little bit.
Yeah,
just my 200 and some pages worth.
Absolutely, it's great. So I want to ask you about sturgeon. You said you don't like sturgeon.
No, I don't like sturgeon.
Why? Why is that? I never had sturgeon.
Okay, so it's possible I've not had it cooked well. And by that, I mean, so I've only had sturgeon in Azerbaijan. And every time I have it, I find it to be, it's a large white fish. And I don't know, it's just overly meaty and maybe overcooked.
Okay.
I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's so expensive. Like, I get maybe why its eggs are expensive, right? Like caviar. But the actual fish itself, I find it to be, I like a light flaky fish.
Right,
I don't like a kind of like Chilean sea. I don't like a fish that's like a steak. So I'm not a fan of sturgeon.
But yeah, sturgeon is from the Caspian Sea, which is
Sturgeon from the Caspian Sea.
central to our story.
And again, I have a few fish recipes in the book. And, despite the location of the Caspian Sea, I think that in general, when people in the West, again, think of sort of Central Asian cuisine, you think of bread and lamb and dumplings maybe and beef and just kebabs, right? Like something like shashlik, kebab. But there is a massively old tradition of fish eating, not only around the Caspian Sea, but in Central Asia because of the once great Aral Sea, as well as the rivers,
the river systems,
through there. So there's there is this tradition of fish cookery, fish eating that I wanted to celebrate as well, and also bring sort of to light within the head notes of the recipes that deal with fish about the environmental degradation that has occurred in these regions with regard specifically to the waterways. I mean, it's like state planning under the Soviets, like dried up the Aral Sea.
Yeah.
And that is happening right now in Iran and near my father's hometown in Lake Urmia. It's just disappearing.
Yeah. If you see satellite images from Lake Urmia, it's
gone. My dad has a picture of himself in like the
Shocking.
60s where he's like going down a little a little ladder into this like massive lake, and he's like, you should see it now. It's basically not there. And I mean, that's unfortunate, obviously. The Caspian is not fully drying up, but they have massive problems with overfishing of the sturgeon.
Yeah.
I think recently, they go on and off. Like, I think recently they've lifted the ban on sturgeon fishing. It keeps going on and off. And like Russia, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Azerbaijan all get together to decide, or I think, we're not going to eat sturgeon for a while, But then they farm them and they, take all their
eggs.
Eggs.
Yeah.
But, it does appear that perhaps there is a growing recognition that these kind of sort of waterways need to be managed more sustainably, but who knows? I mean, we were supposed to meet our like climate goals, and now we're screwed. So who knows? Yeah. We can hope. But I, recognize that there's not really an ability to buy sturgeon in London or Dallas or, Wales. So I suggest using whitefish or salmon for the recipes in Silk Roads.
You can change,
Yeah, but I just really, for those, I was like, it doesn't have to be sturgeon, but I want to make sure that we talk about the fact that this is not, this is not an area that is solely for carnivores, right?
Yeah.
Like someone was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea there were going to be so many vegetarian or like vegan recipes in your book. And I was like, well, yeah, that's just, this is not necessarily like, purposeful choices on my part. This is just my attempt to actually share these cuisines and these cultures that do include a lot of vegetables and vegetarian friendly meals, and meat being a luxury, right? Even the dishes that I do have that have meat, I say some such and such noodle dish feeds 6 to 8 people, but it has like 500 grams of beef in it. That's a very small amount compared to what a Westerner would assume that they'd be like 500 grams, like that's my portion, But like even in this bowl of noodles on the table here, there's chicken in here, but there's not a ton. It's in there, so you can actually pick around it if you don't want to eat it. I've frankly been eating the noodles, but meat is not something that is consumed on the scale, I think, volume wise, as we are sort of accustomed to in the Western world.
Which is not good. It's to our detriment, and of course
it's bad for our bodies. It's bad for the world. Like I like it, but
and also it makes us not appreciating the actual good flavor, the good stuff. Which brings me to the chapter of fries, which I love. The chapter of fries, it's fantastic and it's central to all the Asian dishes. But also you had this rice and potato, which was a vegetarian kind of thing. But tell me more about rice in general, because it's
rice is life, man. That's what they say. Rice is life.
It's a whole. You can.
Rice is my favorite food.
You can talk about it for hours.
Rice is my favorite food. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago. I made some Indian food. I took it over to my sister's house, and I was like, "Oh, so you'll make some." I was staying at my mom, made it at my mom's house. And I was like, "And you make the rice over at your house?" And she was like, "I don't have any rice in my house." I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" I was like, what do you mean? I don't understand that statement, and I refuse to believe it.
Oh my God.
She goes, no, I have rice for risotto. I was like, okay, well, I have that too, but what about like some basmati rice or, short grain rice or Chinese? I have like 5 different variety of rice in my house right now. Like, no, I think I've got 6. I just ordered some jasmine rice. I couldn't believe it. And this is, someone from the same household as me. This is my full-blooded sister. She's like, oh no, we don't keep rice in the house. I don't really like rice. I love rice. Rice, I think, is the constant. You asked about the ingredient, the spice, cumin. I think rice is the constant across these regions and across these cultures, and obviously far, far beyond. Right? Like rice in India, you can't have a conversation about Indian food without biryanis and rices. You can't move into Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, without Vietnam, without and looking into the rice cultures there, and the economy and the environment. Like there's so much of all of Asia. Like the continent of Asia is tied to this grain that is the most eaten grain in the world. Like humans eat it everywhere. Like Ethiopia has a lot of rice. There's rice everywhere. The South Carolina gold rice is a story that I want to explore too, that I'm not that familiar with, but I know that there's really interesting sort of like slave trade stories about the cultivation of rice in the Americas as well. But yeah, rice supposedly originated in either China or India. No one really knows. There are 2 different strains, or like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? What came first, the rice or the rice?
Yes.
Like it's like, I don't know. Like, and I don't really care.
You will tell you India if you're a Chinese historian.
No, exactly. You have so many different varieties, and people have their thing. And I heard someone tell me, I heard someone say, "Oh, well, biryani, Indian biryani. They say it came from the Persians, but it really was here first." And I was like, "That's so funny because you ask the Persians and they'll tell you the other thing." So everyone's got their own origin stories and perspective. But what they all have in common is this love of and dependence on, rice. Yeah. And for me, I've had a couple of questions and talks or in sort of written interviews that are like, describe your favorite meal or where should I start in this book, blah, blah, blah. And my answers always have to do with rice. They're always my favorite meal, at the simplest meal, rice with soy sauce, fried egg, maybe a little hot sauce. That to me is just the easiest, most perfect little thing. Where do I think you should start cooking from in the book? If you wanted to find some sort of really, really demonstrative recipe, I think the Uzbek plov, because you have the rice, but I also direct you to cook it in a kind of Persian, Iranian method with the towel over top, but it also, pulls on cumin and whatnot. So it really, to me, speaks to so much of what the book is about. And, I have a recipe in Silk Roads for tachin, this Iranian rice and yogurt. I think it's referred to as a cake in the book. That is my death row meal. It is my favorite food in the world. Yes. I try that out of my cold dead hands, basically. But no, rice I think is, I had to cut so many rice recipes.
Really?
Yeah, because I just had too many. I was like, I want that rice recipe, that rice recipe.
Talk to me about the tagine recipe. The
tagine?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is when deciding what recipes to include in the final stage of the book, one of the things that I really that really guided me was whether sort of what the point would be. Will this introduce something to people? Will this whether it's something supremely delicious or some knowledge or just, I don't know, fun.
Yeah.
I gave you this rhubarb and radish salad. It's delicious and it's just fun. I'm like, this is different. But tachin, you can go online, you can Google this thing, and you can find 50 different recipes for tachin. There's so many, and I bet you they're probably all good. I do think mine is better because I do something a little bit different than a lot of them do. But it's a baked rice dish that you sort of parboil the rice first, and then you mix it with a combination of yogurt, egg yolks, and saffron. And then you layer it up in a pot with chicken that you've sort of also kind of par cooked.
Yeah.
And you put that in the middle and then you bake it. Or you can do it, some recipes call for doing it on the stove. I actually like doing mine in the oven because I just put it in there and walk away. And the chicken also is sort of, been marinated with saffron and yogurt. And it's just this very savory, rich, beautiful dish that I remember so vividly having for the first time at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. when I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so my mom is American, and her repertoire of Iranian dishes that she cooked were limited by the ones that my great aunt, who came from Iran, taught her to cook. Because this was it's the 80s and 90s. This is before, obviously, the internet, but also before any of the major Iranian cookbooks were out on the market. It was just you just learned from people. And people don't always share all the information too, especially to a white woman, frankly. And they're like, I'm not going to tell Sue the answer to this quandary here. So my mom just had to figure things out, but she did. And the Iranian dishes that she knew how to cook were excellent, but she only knew a certain number. And so in the 80s and 90s in Detroit, and still to this day, there are not really any Iranian restaurants. But I remember going to Washington, D.C. with my family, and we went to an Iranian restaurant, and I ordered this thing. I remember reading it on the menu, being like, rice, love rice, obviously. Chicken, I love chicken. And then it said saffron and yogurt. It was saffron yogurt chicken rice. I'm like, yes, I will order saffron yogurt chicken rice. And they brought out a slice. A triangular slice of this thing that just sort of sat there. It didn't move. It wasn't a pile of rice then where the grains were all sort of connected to each other, almost like a savory rice pudding, but not juicy,
Yeah.
And I ate it and was like, oh my goodness. because this was something, and I think that maybe my mom tasted it as well. It was probably like her first time ever trying this dish also, because again, like we didn't go to Iranian restaurants. They didn't exist in suburban Detroit, and she didn't know how to cook this. Like my aunt did not teach her this. So when we go to this restaurant, I was like, hello, this is delicious. And from then on, I was kind of like obsessed with tagine as a kid. And I think, I can't remember my mom making it, but I must have figured out a way to make her make it because
you must have.
Well, I must have, because I didn't just have it that once, you know? I mean, we would go to friends' houses and have, you know, dinner parties with the other members of the sort of the Iranian Metro Detroit diaspora. And I think like Nasreen and Farima, they probably cooked some good tagine, but I love that dish so much. And it has been for years my sort of like dinner party go-to thing. I know how to cook it. I know how to do it well. That's what I like the oven situation, because you can just put it in there and be like, and then you come back and and it turns out so nicely. So you have this kind of like gorgeous presentation where you bring it to the table. I think it was my son's 2nd birthday. I put candles in a tagine and brought it out to him. Now he requests like a funfetti cake covered with sprinkles, but he was 2. He didn't know. I was like, I'm just going to give you tagine covered in like candied barberries and pink candles. Because it really does look like a cake, and it is so sort of just gorgeous to behold. And it is so delightfully simple and easy to make. And that's the kind of thing that I also really wanted to make sure that came through in the book and the recipes themselves, is that this might be an underexplored region for us culinarily and culturally. But it is not a difficult one to not master necessarily, but to tackle in our home kitchens. Like I'm not trained as a chef. I, unlike you, Thom, have never worked in a restaurant. Like I'm just me. I'm just a home cook. I'm a very good one, and I'm like quite precise, and my recipes work really, really well. And you know, they're tasty, but they're also simple. They're also things that like are not meant to. I mean,
of course, like it's not a Michelin star. It's a different concept. Yeah, and that's food that people eat every day.
No, but I mean, I think people assume, I think there's an assumption like the more quote unquote foreign something is, the more maybe difficult that will be then to bring that into your own home and into your own kitchen. Whereas like, kill me if I'm gonna make a hollandaise sauce. Like that's something that's like on every brunch menu, but like you break your sauce, you're screwed. Right? Like you break your sauce. There's no sauce in Silk Roads to break, basically. Like you make your you hand pull a noodle and it's not uniform. That adds to the deliciousness of it. And it's also just not that hard. It's a little time consuming.
Yeah, of course.
But there's a friend of mine from grad school, lives in Michigan. I saw her at an event that I did this fall, and she's this like red-headed Irish-American woman from Philadelphia, and she is a self-proclaimed not good cook. And she keeps sending me pictures of the dishes that she's been making from Silk Roads. She like made the Uzbek plov on Thanksgiving. Like she was like, I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to do this, but you're right, it is really easy and it's so good. And so to be able to sort of say, okay, now you're sitting in like suburban Michigan making Uzbek plov, and you didn't think that like these are things, recipes or cultures or cuisines that you were going to be able to bring into your own home, and to be able to do that is like just extraordinary. Like I'm so happy to hear that. Basically,
that's great. That's good to hear. That's what you want to hear.
No, that's exactly what you want to hear. She was like, everybody at my gym has been cooking from your recipes from your book too. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Do you eat the plov at the gym? Like, how do you know that? But these are cuisines that are by definition simple in their execution and their ingredients. Like the recipes, whether they're mine or an auntie's in Kyrgyzstan, are not going to be a laundry list of ingredients and like cost you $1 gazillion dollars. Like it's going to be salt, pepper, cumin, like rice, lamb, carrot. Maybe like not just that, but it's the way they come together. These things that are familiar to us already, that are, I think, the sort of delights of the book and the cuisine in general.
Presumably, you traveled a lot in the stands.
Uzbekistan.
Mainly
Uzbekistan, Georgia, obviously a lot of time in China and Azerbaijan. I've never been to Iran.
Okay, yeah, that's sad. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, obviously, the markets they're fantastic.
There's nothing like a good market.
You are listening to the Delicious Legacy podcast by me, Thom. There's more to come after the break, and it gets better. And the melons. Let's address the elephant in the room.
The melons. So apparently Uzbekistan not only is home to all melons throughout history, but also is the home to like the best melons in the world. And like I went to Uzbekistan in March and I went in April. And so it was very much the tail end of the winter melon season and way before the summer harvest. So I was kind of like not well positioned for a melon. But my father had been talking about this melon from Uzbekistan that I read about in the introduction to Silk Roads that he basically like carried across the world. Because
I was so sad.
I was so sad too. So he went on this trip with a bunch of American physicians in 1978 through, I think they went to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. And I guess they only didn't go to Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan. In any case, supposedly to like learn about all the advances of Soviet medicine.
Right.
But my dad was like, they were not very advanced, but you know, it was one of these goodwill trips before, you know, the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union. And but my dad was basically like in Tashkent one day, and he went out to a market, and he said he saw. I mean, I have a picture. I think it's in the book. I have a picture of all these melons in this market in Tashkent that he took back then. Yeah. I really wanted it to be a double-page spread of just like melons in your face, but we didn't have enough pages. But he said he like looked at one of these melons that looked so much to him like a melon that he'd eaten in his childhood in Iran. And at this point in time, he'd been in the U.S. for about 14 years. I mean, going back to Iran occasionally, but just, you know, living as an expatriate, living as an immigrant, living as a, you know, second culture man in Metro Detroit in Midwestern America, which has really excellent fruit. But clearly the melons were not up to snuff because he got this melon and he apparently like took it into the hotel in Tashkent. And he tells me specifically, and I quote it in the essay, he says he was carving it up at the table. He goes, Anna, it was like a riot. Because all of the doctors apparently were like, wait, Shapur, what is that? Like, I want to try some. So she started like, and I can see him. This is how he cuts melon to this day. It's like truly with like surgical precision. He's like a surgeon, and he'll take a knife and then he just like sticks the knife in and he'll eat it off the tip of his knife. But he will make sure that when you cut that melon rind, there is not one little bit of edible flesh that is missing. Like
important.
You will eat all of the good melon. Nothing will go to waste. And so he says he's carving up this melon, and all the doctors are like, "This is amazing. We want melon like this." Blah 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 blah, and they're so happy because obviously, you know, whatever they were being fed was not great. So my dad apparently then takes these guys and women presumably to the market, and they all like buy melons, and they're eating melons on the rest of their trip. And then one of the last days, he said he saw this melon. That he thought was just the best looking melon. Like, I mean, I don't understand how one thinks this way. Like, how do you see a piece of fruit and be like, that's the best looking peach I've ever seen? But my dad was like, it was the best looking melon I'd ever seen in my life. Wow. And so he decided he wanted to take this melon back to Michigan because my older siblings this was the souvenir. He wanted to bring this back to my brother and my sister because they needed to try this Uzbek melon. So he tells the story how he takes it from like Tashkent, and then they go to Tajikistan, and this melon is like rolling around in the like airplane bins or rolling around in the tour buses, but it's literally like going with him across Central Asia on this Soviet-sponsored medical tour. Finally, he gets it back to the U.S. They fly into Dulles in Washington, D.C., and apparently the guy just says, the customs agent's like, oh, you guys came back from the Soviet Union? You know, it's in 1978. It's height of the Cold War. What did you bring with you? And my dad's like, oh, I didn't buy anything. Yeah. And it's true. He apparently did not buy anything. He goes, oh, but I just have this melon. Just this one melon, he says.
Dad.
I know. And he like added it on. It was like a P.S. I've got some fruit. And apparently the custom agent was like, no, you can't bring this melon into America. And supposedly he then like picked it up and walked it over to a garbage bin and just dumped it in. And my dad just like watched him do this. And as he was recounting the story for me, for the book specifically, he just goes, I bet you that customs agent ate it, that son of a bitch. It's like, I highly doubt that. But like, it was because unlike you, Daddy, I don't think he looked at it and saw like the world's best melon. I think he was like, this crazy man has brought back fruit from the USSR.
Yeah.
It's probably like poisoned with Stalin's like, elixir of communism. Like, who knows? There was no way the Washington, D.C. guy was eating this. But so my dad had been telling this story for literally decades. And this is sort of the story that started my entire interest in the region and in talking about the way in which food travels and memory travels and food memories travel. Because even though I never got to eat this melon, even though frankly my dad never got to eat this melon, he calls it the best melon he's ever had, but he never had it. I'm like, how do you even know it was good? Maybe it was like mealy and full of worms. Who knows? But it doesn't even matter. Because like to him, it was the most perfect thing. And he's been talking about it and he's been telling this story and telling our family, telling my siblings, telling myself about these Uzbek melons for so long.
Half a century.
Oh my God, half a century.
Nearly.
I'm not a half a century old, delicious legacy listeners, but soon. I'll get there.
Not so soon.
I'll get there. Fingers crossed, I'll get there. But, this is a story that has been shared. This is how, especially I think immigrants talk about food from home, talk about these memories of what is important to us and what we take with us and what we carry across the world, physically and what we carry across time, right? Like I, got to Uzbekistan in March where there were no really any melons to be had, except I finally found one and I paid out the wazoo for a good melon, but not like the world's best melon because it was April or March.
Well, they last from the previous season.
They're harvested in August and September, and then the summer melons are eaten then, and then a lot of melons are hung up basically to dry and to sort of just not rot, just to stay. They're hung up in storage in these special melon sheds that are temperature controlled like naturally, and presumably now they have like, I don't know, industrial melon sheds probably, right? 2026 probably. But when I went, and then you eat them across the course of the winter. And as the colder it gets, as the days grow longer or shorter, I should say, the nights grow longer. These melons increase in price because you're not getting your fresh fruit and vegetable in the depths of winter in Central Asia, right? In Uzbekistan. And the melon is that fresh fruit, that fresh burst of vitamin C and nutrients and just summer in a bite, right? That you can have in the depths of the cold winter. And they get progressively sweeter because the sugars tend concentrate as well, and they get juicier. And but then they turn, Thom. Then the melons, they take a turn because you can't just keep a melon hanging in a shed forever, right?
Fair enough,
eventually it's going to go off.
Yeah.
So by the time I get a melon, and I paid 45 pounds for it, 45 pounds is like $70.
Jesus.
I paid a lot of money for a melon. Yeah. And I paid, by the way, in a stack of cash that was 3 inches high because I had to go from no joke, village exchange person to exchange for it because no one had change for $100. I had to exchange a £100 note to pay for this thing. And I was out in the middle of nowhere in Uzbekistan, literally in the countryside. And I was like, can I just pay by credit card? Yeah, no. The answer is no. Despite the price, because I had cash, I just didn't have that much cash on me because I didn't expect to go spend that much money, in Fergana Valley. But yeah, I ended up getting this massive melon. And by this time, I'm all by myself. By the way, I'm by myself. My husband's not around. I'm just traveling by myself. I've got this very large melon. I went back to my hotel and I went into the dining room. like history repeats itself, right? Like I go into the dining room of this hotel and like the bartender helped me get a knife and like we started carving up the melon and it was so juicy and it was so sweet. And like 3/4 of it was like the other quarter was like starting to rot.
Okay.
Like it was really starting. It was like I feel like I feel as though they really overcharged me for that 45-pound situation because it was already rotting. But they didn't. You can't know that about a melon, right? Until you cut into it.
Unless it's your dad.
Unless you're Singaporean, sorry, and you're like convinced of the supremacy of a melon from a market in Soviet Union. But I basically was by myself in this hotel, and I just took slices of melon to the other people in this basement. It was a basement, tiny little guest house hotel, and there were like 4 other tables. I think there was one couple from Britain, and I was like, "Hello, would you like some melon? Would you like some melon? Would you like some melon?" And then I left most of it with the wait staff there, the bartenders, and they were like, basically like, "Are you sure? Like, this is an expensive melon." It's like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah,
I'm like, one person, I literally cannot eat this melon. But my dad wanted me, he goes, "What did you do with all the melon?" And I was like, well, I gave it away. Like, I can't.
People ate it.
People ate it. Oh, no,
it
it didn't get thrown away. No. That custom agent was not present. It got eaten except for the rotted part. But I was there also to do, I was tasting salads and noodles. I was like, I'm not just going to eat a whole melon.
Yeah.
And it was excellent. Was it the best melon I've ever had? No. But I was determined to have one because of the way that story about the melon, that my dad had told it for,
all these years, my entire life. There was no way I was getting out of Uzbekistan without a melon in my mouth, basically. And I mean, I think that's kind of the larger point that I try to get across in Silk Roads is this notion of what we carry with us as individuals, as immigrants, as traders, as travelers, as diplomats, as podcast hosts and guests, like that we share this stuff across the world. Like you move from the East Coast of America to California, and I have this as my epigraph. It's a Joan Didion quote about like the seeds that the settlers in America carried. And in her introduction to that, in her book, Where I Was From, she talks about how, her family members, her ancestors crossing America, like the kids died on this, in the little wagons and stuff. Yeah, it was.
And she says, children can be buried, but the seeds, you still carry that.
Yeah.
And food is something that we take with us, whether it's in concrete form or in our memories, and we pass that down and we spread it around. Like, this restaurant's been open for 6 months. I'm going to send a lot of people here. They've come here, who knows when, to open this restaurant and share food and share culture in the process of doing so. Which,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
going to have some more. There's like 2 more noodles left and I'm going to eat them all.
You are listening to the Delicious Legacy podcast by me, Thom Dinas. There's more to come after the break, and it gets better. I don't know if you want to talk about the yogurt in USA.
Oh, I find this so interesting. I didn't know what I was going to write about yogurt. I really didn't know what I was going to write about in the yogurt chapter. I knew I wanted to write about yogurt. I had this sort of sense, because there's this...
It's important. In Central Asia, it's cornerstone.
I mean, yogurt, you can't really have a meal without yogurt. And I have this gorgeous memory, and I do write about it, about like waiting for this like roast goat to come out and being fed this like, yak yogurt. And I was like, what the heck is it? It was so incredible.
Oh,
it was so good. It was like fresh yak yogurt, and they had this like little crystal sugars on it. It was just so good. And I was like, didn't know you could make yogurt from a yak, but like, of course you can. Like, why wouldn't, like, obviously you can. But I knew I wanted to write about yogurt. I just didn't really know what I wanted to write. And my dad was telling me about how when he first moved to Michigan, to America, he wanted to find some yogurt. And he couldn't find yogurt anywhere. No one knew what it was. It was 1964. They're like, you want to find what?
I've heard that before. Like,
didn't exist. People didn't know it. They don't have yogurt. Like, nowadays we eat yogurt. Everybody eats yogurt.
Yeah, you have force-fed yogurt everywhere you go. Yeah.
I mean, there's like weird yogurts. There's ones that are colored and have sugars. And apparently I don't think I mentioned it in the book, I took it out. There was a thing in the U.S. at least called like Go-Gurt. It was like these squeezable, like kids squirtable, like strawberry flavored, probably with corn syrup and stuff. I don't even know. Like the farthest thing from like yogurt that yogurt should be.
Yeah.
Or could be, but kids wanted to eat it and it would make money, blah, blah, blah. But no, I thought it was really interesting. I wanted to sort of delve into sort of something about yogurt. And I started researching the history of yogurt in America, and I was going to write about these, and I did write about these, this Armenian couple who lived in Andover, Massachusetts in the 1920s, who started selling, like making their own Armenian matzon, in their little house in Massachusetts and selling it. They're there. You could actually find pictures of their horse-drawn cart where they just like went through the suburbs of Boston, like selling Armenian yogurt, which is awesome. And that turned in their last name was the Columbosians, and they turned it into the Colombo Yogurt Company, which is the yogurt that I actually grew up eating. And they truncated their name because in that area at that point in time, Italian Americans were the predominant immigrant group. So instead of being the Columbosians, they were like, we're going to be the Colombos. So, this is just an added to the pile of all the Italian American foodstuffs that are being sold here. But what I hadn't realized was that when I write about sort of the popularization of yogurt in the U.S., because of this incredibly voyeuristic, orientalist advertising campaign by Dannon Yogurt of like these Abkhazian, Georgian people that like Dannon put out in like the late 70s that are like, would you like to live to be 100? And then it shows these people in Georgia, like these really old people, old men mostly, with like scythes and riding on horses and going through the like vineyards. And they don't even show them eating yogurt. They're just like, people in Soviet Georgia have been eating yogurt for the millennium. They are also all almost 100 years old. And there's this like very, very serious broadcaster sharing this information. And then at the end, this little old lady comes out and she's like 4 foot tall, and she comes over and she tugs at the ear of the guy and she's like, oh, you're my son, kind of thing. And he's like, oh, he's proud of her son, and he's standing there like eating a pot of Dannon yogurt. And it's like, okay, so you're going to popularize yogurt by basically saying Soviets. I mean, I was like, actually, I think about it now that I'm saying that, it's actually a big risk for the advertising company and Dannon to take, to be like, in the Soviet Union. like, meanwhile, we're saying everything that goes on over there is bad, but please eat this yogurt if you want to live long.
How bizarre.
It's really, I mean, it's on YouTube.
All right, this is the advert from Danone from the 70s. Do find it on YouTube as well. It's funny to look the video too.
In Soviet Georgia, there are 2 curious things about the people. A large part of their diet is yogurt, and a large number of them live past 100. Now, we're not saying that Dannon yogurt will help you live longer, but Dannon low-fat yogurt is a wholesome, natural food rich in nutrition. By the way, 89-year-old Bagrat Tapagwa liked Dannon so much, he ate 2 cups. That pleased his mother very much. Dannon, America's #1 yogurt, is here.
It's a really interesting way of advertising what ended up becoming, an extremely popular mainstream breakfast, lunch snack. I mean, we don't really eat it for dinner so much in the US or the UK unless you're having maybe a Greek meal or an Indian meal, and it's, you got tzatziki or raita, but people don't, I think it's a breakfast meal. I used to just eat when I was like not eating that much. As a 20-something-year-old in New York City, I used to just eat like a thing of yogurt for lunch every day. Like that was my lunch. I don't know how I was like walking around. I must have been starving. Yogurt is filling, but not that filling. But honestly, what was interesting to me about that is, number one, this thing that's become so mainstream was partially integrated into British and U.S. Diets because of an advertisement that highlighted people from across the world that people don't, I mean, they're not actually Georgian. I say Georgian because they're Abkhazian, which is like a kind of area that's still within Russia, but it's sometimes considered, it's a little fuzzy to me, frankly. I don't really understand, to be honest. I don't really know. But But these are, non-European people, right? And that sort of are credited with, this ad is credited with really like pushing yogurt to the forefront of American cuisine. And nowadays we don't even think about it. Like we call it Greek yogurt, right? I mean, you're Greek.
I know. Everybody...
Some people call it Greek yogurt. Some people say, oh no, but it's Turkish. Some people are like, no, this is Armenian. Like, it's like we're all kind of doing the same. It's like baklava. Let's not try to like parse that one out. But in terms of yogurt, the word itself is a Turkic word. Like we've just, again, going back to the sort of, sublimation of the etymological, is that we have just really, we don't even realize that we are using a foreign word in our day-to-day usage, or that our favorite breakfast item is not a British thing. It's not an American thing. It's a Greek
Central Asia.
It's an Asian thing. And I mean, there are some people who say the first yogurt was, created in, quotation marks here, quote unquote, created or invented because it was in a saddlebag of someone crossing like a desert. But like, who knows? This is one of these things. Unlike finding a petrified melon seed in Uzbekistan, we can't actually know when these preparations were first made, but we do know that they're really, really old, and they don't come from Europe. Right, yogurt making is not a European thing, or it wasn't until it now is. I mean, French yogurt, delicious. But again, it's one of these foodstuffs that we don't realize necessarily has a foreign origin, and I think it's worth, especially in this day and age, in this sort of geopolitical climate, to understand that we are not, even though you and I are sitting on this little island of Great Britain, like we're not islands, like we're not alone, and we have always been influenced, specifically when it comes to what's on our tables, by the outside world and outside forces and foreign and immigrants coming in with their
continuous flows of immigration.
Continuous flows.
We are humans. We travel. We are curious. We don't stay in our place.
No.
We came out of Africa, for God's sake. We didn't stay in Africa. If we wanted to be on a nice, hot, tropical place, we would stay in Africa. But no, we went everywhere. Why?
And we took our food with us. And like, if you're Rosa Columbosian in 1928's Andover, Massachusetts, and you wanted to make a few bucks, you were like, I'm going to make some yogurt. I'm going to drive it around in a horse-drawn buggy. I mean, you really should look up the buggy. It's so cute. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. I love that this is how, and I remember the little Colombo yogurt pots from when I was a kid. And I was like, this is where that started, and this is where it's gone. Now it's, that I think they sold to Dannon eventually. But there are so many things like that are these foodstuffs or ingredients that came from outside of where we are and have become so integral to who we are now. And like, I don't think we need to know everything. Like, we don't need to know where everything comes from necessarily, right, to enjoy it. But I do think it's important to respect that origins of things and to recognize, the continuous flow of people and food and ingredients and ideas. And that's a whole story.
Yeah. Hey, we can wrap here slowly. But which famous historical figure you would invite in a dinner party from Central Asia?
Oh, from Central Asia? I mean...
Who would be on your dinner party?
I think Yang Guifei would be one. This is the woman who was the sort of Tang Dynasty consort of the emperor, and she maybe started this because of her love. The An Lushan rebellion, and she's just a very polarizing woman in Chinese history. And An Lushan is a Mandarin name for who was, in fact, a Turkic Sogdian rebel that...
Of course.
Yeah. No, it's like even that. Like, I know this man's name as An Lushan, but he's Turkish. Like, that's a Mandarin name. I don't even know what his Turkish name is. But I feel like having a woman would be really important to me. So she's the first one I can think of, and she's very interesting. Maybe An Lushan, but no, probably not. I actually would love to... I feel like it's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Be like, come on over, Genghis Khan. Like, maybe Genghis Khan. I mean, for me, there are these, I would love to, frankly, I'd love to have like dinner with my grandparents who died before I was born. Like, there are other sort of figures across the time and space that I want to hear their stories more than... I don't know, that took a weird answer, but like,
But it's a good answer.
I'd like to have some important women, some family members. I mean, Genghis Khan would be scary, I feel like. And
Fascinating.
yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting.
That's good.
No one's asked me that before. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun and so delicious, and I'm full.
Well, mission accomplished then.
Mission accomplished.
Yes.
This place is great, really. And this has been really wonderful. Thank you
Great.
for wanting to talk to me.
Absolutely. And looking forward to another book of Central Asian foods.
Well, I have some more recipes. They were my editors were like, well, Anna, that's what Substack's for. Like the ones that we cut,
Right.
you can just put them on your Substack. And like, I was like, oh, that's true. Yeah. So
What's next for you? What's the next?
I have book ideas. So I'm gonna work on that, but I'm still in sort of Silk Roads mode. What's next for me? I'm going to Bulgaria this weekend to go skiing. But no, there's I'm going to the Ballymaloo Food Festival in Ireland in mid-May, so that's really exciting. And I'm doing a dinner outside of Chicago in late May, which is very exciting, at a place called Grainer Farm. But just still some Silk Road stuff. I mean, I've got a 7-year-old. We got World Book Day. Apparently I'm supposed to make a Pikachu costume or Charizard, some Pokemon costume. You know, so life is life.
Not the Jagger Khan costume.
No, yeah, I know. Apparently he announced some Pokemon yesterday, Thom, that I'd never heard of. And I was like, what? And then he goes, you can just order it. And I was like, no,
So people can find you obviously on Instagram.
Instagram. This place tastes delicious. My Substack is called Where in the World is Anna Ansari? And my name is Anna Ansari. So, you know.
Great.
There are not too many. There are like 2 other girls. I think there's like a teenager in Texas called Anna Ansari. But she's not me. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Oh, this is so lovely.
Right. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Anna today. I hope you found it fascinating and it opened your appetite for more. And buy her book, Silk Roads, a flavor odyssey with recipes from Baku to Beijing, out now. And if this episode made you hungry for more, please like, rate and review wherever you get your podcast from. It really helps with the visibility of the podcast in the relative categories on the different platforms. We are now on Ko-Fi as well, so if you can help the podcast with one-off donation, please go to www.ko-fi.com/The Delicious Legacy Podcast, all one word, and give a $5 if you can. As you know, I'm not backed by any big media company and I'm not sponsored. This is, of course, a project of love and passion, and it's just me who does all the producing, recording, editing, mixing, week in, week out. Let me just tell you that I have so many more ideas and recipes that I want to share with you. However, I can only do this if I have your generous support. That's all for this week. Stay curious and cook something brilliant if you have time. If you want to ask any questions or want to get in touch with suggestions or ideas or any other comments you have to make, please email me at thedeliciouslegacypodcast@gmail.com or come over on Blue Sky, the social media platform which is a bit more pleasant, new, better, civilized Twitter in a sense, and join me there, or on Instagram where you'll find me as The Delicious Legacy. So I'm waiting eagerly for your comments, my clever, clever people. I'll see you again next week for another archaeogastronomical adventure. I've been Thomas Dinas, and this was the Delicious Legacy Podcast. Lots and lots of love. Bye!